me ask you this. So we have all this fraud, okay?
Yeah.
And taxpayers have been completely left out in the lurch.
Yeah.
We've had to pay the bill. We've had to foot the bill. He may, say, I'm not going to run for re-election, which is essentially an admission of guilt. Is he going to get away with it? Hello, everybody. We have an exciting show for you today. We have Minnesota State Representative Walter Hudson, who gave a phenomenal testimony in the House Oversight Committee hearing on this massive Minnesotan fraud that is taking place right now that has driven Governor Walz to resignation, essentially quitting his re-election campaign. And who knows, we're hoping some charges will be brought up. Thank you so much for being here, Representative Hudson.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for the invite.
So let me ask you this right off the bat, just so our audience has a little bit of context. How do you fit into all this? How did this get across your desk? And why did James Comer and the Oversight Committee call you in to give your testimony in front of Congress?
Well, let me give you a real short bio. So
Please.
I've been privy to this in a number of different roles, everything from citizen activist, commentator to elected official. So I've been in the Minnesota House of Representatives for 3 years, my second term. Prior to that, I was on the Albertville City Council here where I live. And all throughout that, and going back many, many years prior, I've been a commentator, I've contributed to Hot Air, PJ Media, was a associate editor for the David Horowitz Freedom Center. And so I've always had my ear to the ground when it comes to politics and political subjects. And so I've been aware of this emergent fraud issue for many, many years. Of course, the Feeding Our Future scandal going back a few years ago was a huge deal. At that time, we were only talking about $250 million, and that was earth-shattering. It was the biggest COVID-era fraud on record in history. And little did we know that a few years later,
250 million. It's so funny that we put it that way, right? Now that we know it's over billions, right? Yeah, relatively.
Yeah, by contrast, you're talking about the U.S. Attorney's Office talking about $9 billion of potential fraud. You almost long for sit on the House Fraud Prevention and State Agency Oversight Committee and have been privy to the hearings that we've had on that matter, where we talk to state agency representatives and say, what's going on here? What are you guys doing about it? And that work must have gotten on the radar of Representative Comer and the House Oversight Committee. And so they very generously and honorably extended the invite for me to fly out to DC and help them figure out what's going on.
Thank you so much for that. So it seems obvious that this hearing, which happened pretty fast, was somewhat predicated upon the expose that independent journalist Nick Shirley launched against, a lot of these daycare centers and fraudulent businesses, which were funneling taxpayer money in the millions, but now, like you said, it's in the billions. How familiar with his work are you? What are your thoughts on that? And is it even possible that this hearing would have taken place? I know that you guys have been doing your job for a long time, but is it even feasible that hearing would have come to light had this not happened, that what Nick Shirley did?
Well, I'll start with the direct answer to that question, which I believe the answer is no. What Nick Shirley did is he turned a big old spotlight. He sent up the bat signal. Basically, he showed a big old spotlight onto something that's been developing for a really long time, but did not have the level of awareness and sense of urgency that we're currently seeing from the Trump administration in response to his work of exposing it. Now, that said, I'm starting to lose the earlier part of your question, but my familiarity with Shirley.
Yes.
So recent weeks and months and even this entire year have been full of incredibly surreal experiences for me. I mean, I just had one, right, of going to DC and, talking to all of these Congress people who I've seen on cable news for years. Right. And there they are just sitting there. But one of those surreal moments was in our last hearing in the fraud committee here in Minnesota. Nick Shirley was there. Now, I don't know this kid from Adam, right? And he comes up to me with his furry little mic and, his aide who's recording him on a phone. Yeah. And he's like, hey, could you answer a few questions? I'm like, yeah, sure. No problem. And we had a nice little conversation. And we had a little exchange afterwards. I ended up connecting with him on X after the fact, and that was it. I figured that was it. I mean, that sort of thing happens. Like, people will come up to you, who potential influencers or members of alternative media, and they want to talk to you, and I always am willing to do that. I didn't think nothing of it. Lo and behold, a couple of days later, this video pops out, and all of a sudden, the entire universe knows who Nick Shirley is. Right. And I really do think that is how quickly he catapulted onto the world scene.
Right. You said, I like the way you said that it's surreal seeing all these people. What was the most surreal moment for you in that hearing, and why?
Well, I think in that particular hearing, it was as my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, Minnesota Democrats, tried to craft the narrative, because what happened there was our chair, Kristen Robbins, who also happens to be running for governor of Minnesota, sat down and delivered this presentation with receipts, spreadsheets showing the connections between a lot of entities and individuals that all raise tremendous red flags that are worthy of investigation, and basically asking the question, why aren't you guys looking into this? Why is it that we're the ones putting together these connections as opposed to you, the state agency? Right. And that should be the headline, right? That should be the coverage if you have a media that has any sort of integrity and actual public interest in what's best for their readers. And why
are you concerned about the perpetrators and not the victims, right? The empathy seems misdirected.
Right. And so the Democrats responded to that by completely evading the topic of anything that we had presented and pivoting to this narrative that we, the Republicans on the fraud committee, have been hiding evidence of fraud. Why? Because we won't throw whistleblowers under the bus. We won't dox whistleblowers and say, these are the people who are coming to us under the condition of anonymity because they're afraid for their lives, sometimes literally in some cases, but certainly economically and socially in terms of the damage that we all know would be done to them if they were identified. And how do we know that? This week, while I was in D.C., Governor Walz gets up in front of a podium and tries to throw the U.S. Attorney's Office under the bus. Tries to act like they don't know what they're talking about.
Just so the audience understands, can you refresh? Because I know what you're talking about, but what did he exactly say, please?
He said something along the lines of, so a lot of this has been, just to give a little bit of background, Walz's responses to this fraud have always come in little pulses of action or announcement of something that he's doing or some commentary. And it always comes in reaction to one of three things. Either there's a prosecution, there's a news report, or we come up with something as Republicans that we reveal. It's never proactive. It's always him being reactive.
Right.
And so his biggest problem has been, it's really easy to demonize the credibility of your political opponents. You can just shove it off as, well, that's just politics. It's less difficult to try to discredit a prosecution.
Right.
That's really hard to do, especially as a governor, because people are going to start asking, why are you trying to do that?
Right.
And then beyond that, to actually go after the person in that office themselves, the U.S. attorney, and accuse them of being somehow derelict in their duty. Why? Because of the claims that they're making about how bad this problem is. Joe Thompson, who's now the deputy U.S. attorney, who was the interim, said that we have up to $9 billion of fraud in this state that he suspects, that he could keep 1,000 prosecutors busy, but he only has 25 and only 5 of them can work on these fraud cases. He said, we'll never be able to prosecute our way out of this problem. He said, this is only the tip of the iceberg. And those comments have been very difficult for Walz to contend with. So now that he's dropped out of the race, strangely, he's pivoted to trying to damage the credibility of the U.S. Attorney's Office. And so going back to my point about whistleblowers, if the governor is going to take on the U.S. attorney and try to discredit him and ruin his career, what do you think he's going to do to a state agency staffer with a cubicle in the corner?
100%.
That's the message received.
And let me just, if I may, I love this, Walter, just so the audience can kind of, it was a 4-hour, 5-hour hearing. Essentially, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it has been noted in the record that you and your colleagues have testified that not only did Tim Walz understand, know, perhaps even facilitate this fraud, but even his office, maybe even Representative Ilhan Omar and the mayor himself. Am I correct in that, Walter? And it's been going on for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, the preponderance of evidence has risen to such a degree that there's really only two possibilities. You're either dealing with a level of incompetence that should disqualify these people from working at Taco Bell, or they're complicit.
Right.
There's just you cannot make a credible claim that you didn't know what was going on.
Was there anything that you can share with our audience that, like I know there's obviously he would be, prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, I would hope, if there was specificity of evidence. But in your position, your eloquence, articulation in front of the hearing, you're obviously an intelligent person who deserves their position. And I don't want to put you on the spot. If you say, hey, Nez, I can't answer that. What is your gut feeling? Did he know the whole time? Was he complicit? Was he facilitating this? We all know it's almost impossible not to come to the conclusion that there is a gross amount of incompetence. But right. Did he know about this? Did he facilitate this? Was he in on it? What's your gut tell you? You probably can't say for sure, but what's your gut tell you?
That's correct. Like, obviously, I can't make factual claims that I don't have definitive evidence for, but certainly my gut tells me, all of the above. All of the above.
Right.
And this is part of the problem, because I've been doing a lot of thinking about this. How did it take Nick Shirley doing what he did for this to finally get the attention that it's gotten? And I'm privy to stories and claims that were brought to my attention way earlier last year that were brought to members of the media that I fully expected to blow up into a story that's even more explosive than what we've already heard. And that story never came out. And the guy who was pursuing it, Matt Taibbi, has recently been coming out online and kind of hinting at what he was working on and why he didn't go with the story and what have you. So I now feel comfortable with being able to speak to it. And what I will say is, based upon the comments I've seen both from Taibbi and other journalists who've been proximate to the story, is I think the dynamic that's happening here is that there's a reluctance across the board, across our institutions for accountability, media, government oversight, prosecution. There's always going to be reluctance for anybody to be the first one to say the emperor has no clothes. Right? I mean, that's what that story is about.
100%.
It's right. It's like
100%.
Nobody everybody can see it.
Who's going to have the balls to say it?
Exactly. Right. And there's something very real about that, where, and it's not entirely irrational. It's not cowardice necessarily. As a journalist, your reputation depends upon your credibility. So you're not going to run with a story that you don't have documented evidence for. Right?
And also you're getting threatened, correct? And whistleblowers are being threatened.
Right. And that's the other part. On the whistleblower side, we've already gone through that dynamic of why people don't want to put their name next to claims, because they know they're going to ruin their lives.
Right.
And then on the prosecutorial side of things, I'm sure they would love to move forward with this charge or that charge against this person or that person. But the reality is, we like to pretend we're all equal in this country. The fact of the matter is, the higher up you are on the socioeconomic food chain, the political food chain, the much more dangerous it is for a prosecutor to make accusations against you. And
have you, Walter, faced any threats at all?
Not directly. We were doxxed. My family was doxxed. My wife's phone number and our address was put out there back during session early on. And they threatened to come protest outside the house, ironically at a time when we weren't going to be home because we had a family vacation. But
go ahead, protest. Yeah.
but that plus the assassination of Speaker Maritime Melissa Hortman earlier this year, and of course the Charlie Kirk stuff and all of that. I got to tell you, over the course of the last year, my level of preparedness has changed. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, I love the way you said that. Eloquently said, as usual. Walter, it's a scary time for anybody. Also, I would presume too, Representative Hudson, that even if you did have the balls, let's say, to come out with knowledge that would, incriminate, like you said, you'd have to be naive to think that justice will be served on a silver platter. It seems more than obvious and seems more apparent that even if you did risk your life, your family's life, your livelihood, your career, what's the end game? Is anything going to actually happen from it?
Yes.
I think one of the number one frustrations with, just to be clear, in case you don't know about me, Walter, and I've said this to my audience a million times, I'm not right or left. I mean, I'm definitely not left, but I'm more of if I had to, if somebody, forced me to say it, I'm more of a constitutional centrist because I love America and I believe in the Constitution. And I don't think Trump is either, to be honest, because he's revolutionized the political spectrum. And this is just common sense. It's common sense. You don't stand and you don't try to run over a law enforcement officer and think you're just going to get away with it. And it's just, peachy keen. We don't want our mothers, our daughters, our wives violated in the bathroom and gym locker rooms. Anyway, I don't want to digress, but how much of that plays into this? I mean, the hearing obviously divulged a lot. It seems more than abundantly clear with your colleagues' testimony and yourself that there is enough evidence, the preponderance of evidence, as you say, that these guys are involved, that Governor Walz was involved. His, decision to not run for re-election, to me, is an admission of guilt. What's going to come next? How much of this plays into this? How much of this, can we get anything done? What did you get the feeling? Here's my specific question. Did you get the feeling, Representative Hudson, that anything's going to come out of this hearing, that anything's going to happen because of this?
Yes. And
how so?
Well, I'll tell you, and I want to preface it with this, is that I'm very familiar with the cynicism that a lot of us have out here in the world of nobody in power is ever held accountable, nothing ever happens, those do-nothing Republicans, the uniparty, all that stuff.
Exorbitant frustration, frustration.
And I get it. 100%. I felt it myself.
And I'm old enough. If there's anybody who can speak to, because I used to work in the public sector as a professor, I'll just call myself professor for kicks and giggles. Then I moved into, I've been running businesses anyway. But if there's anybody who understands the bureaucratic, nightmarish red tape involved, it's me, and I'm sure you can speak to that too. But continue.
Well, I'm old enough to remember when I think it was the first or second. Whenever Bush W got a trifecta, I think I was living in Iowa at the time. My wife was going to graduate school, and we're all excited. Oh, the Republicans are finally in charge after years and years and years. This is going to be great. All these amazing things are going to happen. And what did he give us? Medicare Part D.
Yeah.
Thanks, dude. Like, I mean, exactly. And so ever since then,
a war that really shouldn't have happened.
Right. And so ever since then, I've been very sympathetic to this idea of what's the point of voting for Republicans? What do we get out of it for putting our time, our blood, our treasure on the line in order to get these guys in office when they get in there and they don't actually do anything? And that's obviously a legitimate criticism to a degree. But what I think has happened is that frustration has metastasized into a kind of poisonous cynicism that prevents us from making progress. The football team doesn't win by throwing a Hail Mary every play. They pick up inches. They pick up yards, right?
Are you saying for us to exhibit patience?
No. Because, I mean, that's part of it in certain contexts.
I'm teasing,
in a certain context, you need to be patient, right?
Yeah.
You don't want, I'll keep using the sports analogies. You don't want to get called for an early start, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to have a little bit of patience there.
Yeah.
But when the whistle blows, boy, it's time to go, right? Or when the guy says hike. So it's that kind of discipline of just. Well,
I also think people are comparing the intelligence communities and law enforcement agencies to the breakneck speed of Trump. Like Trump, as soon as he got into office, this guy was signing 1,000, EOs, executive orders. He was already, putting things into motion. The guy never sleeps. But that's just not, I think people expected that same kind of electricity and fastidiousness, but that just didn't happen. And that's not even realistic, is it, Walter?
Well, no. I mean, the difference being that Trump had the power and has the power. Right. He can do the things he's doing, and he's just doing. I mean, Venezuela, holy smokes. Look at that as an example.
What an amazing.
Can you imagine
What an
any
amazing
other president.
Yeah. And now they're supporting a dictator. I thought they didn't want any kings.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So
But
let me ask you this, Walter. Let me ask you
Yeah.
this. So we have all this fraud, okay,
Yeah.
and taxpayers have been completely left out in the lurch.
Yeah.
We've had to pay the bill. We've had to foot the bill. He may, say, I'm not going to run for re-election, which is essentially an admission of guilt. Is he going to get away with it?
Going back to Walz, I would say no, and that's everything I said about was a preface to that question, which is that something is happening, something is changing. With this shift in federal focus matters because it brings with it resources. Just before talking to you, in fact, we had this conversation, offline. The reason why we didn't record this earlier is because I was part of a roundtable with other legislators and members of the community and media with the Secretary of Treasury, who's a cabinet member for Donald Trump, was here in town looking at this fraud. You got 2,000 ICE agents on the ground. Like, there are real resources being poured into this state to solve the problem that Joe Thompson articulated. I could keep 1,000 prosecutors busy. Trump's like, okay, let's do it.
I love it. This is what we want.
That's the change.
What we want.
Yeah.
I love that. Is there anything, Walter, thank you for that, by the way, that little insight. Is there anything that you felt, and I want to share a clip of this amazing exchange that you had, which really prompted me to reach out to you. And again, thank you for being here. What do you, was there something that you wish would have happened in the hearing, wish would have been disclosed that wasn't in that hearing that you can share with our audience, a little exclusive here?
100%.
Talk to me, brother.
And I kept, it's funny because I was sitting there on the witness dais in the hearing room, actually trying to text congressional staff ask me that question, the question you just asked. Like, somebody asked me, what are we not getting here? Like,
this is your chance. This is your chance.
So what I would have pointed out had somebody asked me that question is, as a state representative and as a citizen of the United States, I'm extraordinarily disappointed that every single Democrat here who's been addressing us and asking us questions has exhibited no curiosity whatsoever. They clearly did not show up here with the intention of digging in, of learning literally anything at all.
Right.
Everything was this performative narrative expression.
It's Trump's fault. It's Trump's fault. It's Trump's fault.
Yeah, right. And that's not just me making a partisan political point.
It's a fact.
As a matter of civics, that's extraordinarily disappointing.
Yeah.
What an opportunity lost.
I love the way you said that.
An opportunity lost to really understand. Like, for instance, they would bring up things like race, racism, Islam, Islamophobia,
xenophobia,
racial profiling, immigration policy, all these things, but they only brought them up as grievances. They didn't ask us about them. Like, you have an opportunity there as a member of Congress to ask a state legislator who flew across the country to talk to you.
Right.
Tell me what's going on the ground. I'm concerned about racial profiling and immigration policy and the way these policies are being rolled out. What are you seeing on the ground in the state of Minnesota? And I'd have given them plenty of valuable answers, and not just in a partisan package. Like, I know what they're afraid of. They're afraid of losing control of the narrative. That's why they don't ask open-ended questions.
100%.
That's why they're always like, yes or no, blah, 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 because they're not interested in
exactly.
that. Right?
Exactly.
But there is a actual good faith conversation to be had on policy, and we should be having those conversations in spaces like congressional hearings.
Yeah. And so what would you like to say about that they didn't ask you? What would you like to say definitively?
Well,
on the ground. Yeah.
I'll give you an example.
Give me just like some snackable, really heightened kind of demonstrative negligence or fraud that you would like to have, or anything, any kind of defamatory. Right. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, they kept deflecting from the fraud, right? They didn't want to talk about that. They wanted to talk about race and immigration and everything. Okay, ask me about race. You're looking at a black Republican from the state of Minnesota Doesn't that raise some curiosity?
Just it should, right?
You know,
right.
Maybe ask me a personal question or two. So one of the points that I would have loved the opportunity to make is when they try to say that this is racism, this is racial discrimination against the Somali community. What I would like to teach them or show them, because I don't think you have to look too far to see it, is that how have you guys at all asked the Black community, the African American, like foundational Black American, as some of them like to call themselves, have you asked these guys what they think about this? Because I got to tell you, I sit on the Council for Minnesotans of African Heritage, which is one of the legislative councils here in the state of Minnesota. I know what they're thinking because I actually talk to them and ask questions and listen.
Right.
They're looking at all this Somali fraud and they're thinking to themselves, so let me get this straight. We've been voting for you guys for 5 decades or however long it's been.
Right.
You've been talking to us about reparations and telling us that, Whitey's bad and all this stuff. So we keep voting for you, buying that hook, line, and sinker. You do nothing for us. Our schools still suck. Our neighborhoods are still crap. They're dirty. They're crime infested.
We're still poor.
We still don't have any generational wealth. But Abdul over here, who's been in the country for 6 months, is buying a Mercedes and parking at his vacation home and has enough money to send remittances to Somalia.
And bragging about it, too.
Yeah. Let's talk about race. I would love to have a conversation with race about Democrats. But again, there's no curiosity about the reality of what's happening on the ground.
Right. Because like you said, that would completely dismantle their narrative. And something I've said on this show, this is me, by the way, everybody, disclosure, full disclaimer, Representative Hudson has no idea I'm going to say this, and he doesn't submit to this or endorse this, but I've said this 1,000,006 times. And you can comment on this if you want to, Representative Hudson. I have said that they are this party right now, which is actually not even recognizable to the really JFK, the original Democrat Party, or the leadership behind that. They care more about, these are people who could not survive in a free enterprise system. You look at Jasmine Crockett, you look at people like that, AOC. These are people who, if they had to compete for jobs, would fail miserably because their resume, their track record, their achievements are nil, are zero. So, to your point, Representative Hudson, they don't want to ask those kind of questions because the truth will dismantle their ability to hold grip on power and avoid them from ever having to essentially execute a real job. It drives me crazy.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. And by the way, I'm as cynical as the next guy, but what keeps me hopeful, aside from my religious faith, my Christian faith, what keeps me hopeful is just the objective fact that what you just described endows us with a permanent advantage.
Right.
Being correct, standing on truth, having the facts, and acting accordingly is always going to give you an advantage over somebody who has to contrive a narrative. I sat down to testify before Congress, and I had 2 sheets of paper with my opening statement on it and a notepad and a pencil. That's all the preparation I needed because I don't have to make up a story. I could just tell you what I know and what I see with my eyes.
And by the way, I mean, the hearing was like 5 hours long. So I've kind of tried to watch most of it. But when you were being questioned by Representative Garcia, and the clip that you're about to see on the screen is you and that baby child, who I have no idea how they got elected, Representative Frost, they essentially it was a campaign speech. It was a campaign speech. So it was all whataboutism. And I think Americans, correct me if I'm wrong, Walter, I think Americans are sick and tired of whataboutism. We're talking about something specific. We're talking about billions of dollars that is being inflicted on essentially the middle class, okay, the hardworking middle class America who can barely scrape anything by right now and is wondering to themselves, why am I paying taxes? Why am I paying taxes when this is what it goes to? I think this is a good segue right here, Representative Hudson, of what you said about I'm sitting there saying, why don't they, as a civics, as an idea behind your civic responsibility and duty? I want to play this for you and my audience, Representative Hudson, and then I want to get your thoughts on this. Here we go.
Not going to engage in the silly condemnation game.
No. This is not. No. This is not silly. This is the
What
president.
did you have to say about the assassination of Charlie Kirk? What did you have to say about Jay Jones, who's the chief law enforcement officer in the state of Virginia, fantasizing about shooting Republicans
I will reclaim
and watching
my
kids
time.
die in their mother's arms? I'm not playing this game.
The gentleman will stop talking on my time. President Trump reposted conspiracy theories on his Truth Social account about the murder of Minnesota state legislators Mark and Melissa Hortman that suggests that Minnesota Governor Tim Walz had the Hortmans assassinated. Governor Walz says this behavior will get more innocent people killed, and the Hortman children have come out on the president and called on the president to take the statements down. I think it is very important.
Okay. Can I love how you brought up Jay Jones, by the way, Walter. What the hell does this have to do with what's happening in Minnesota?
Nothing.
I mean, tell me. I mean, am I crazy? I'm not crazy. No. My wife is like, you know, what's funny, Representative Hudson? My wife is like, you're yelling at the TV. And I go, I know, but am I nuts or what? Because I literally, what you see is what you get. Like, it's interesting that you say, Representative Hudson, you say, I don't have any notes for this interview. I'm bringing my true essentiality, for better or worse. And there might be a lot of comments saying, Nez, you should have brought notes. Maybe. But you know what? That's what my show is all about. The authenticity factor is more important to me. And I've done my due diligence prior. But what does this have to do with what's happening in Minnesota? And this is just a microcosm, correct me if I'm wrong, Walter, of what all of them were trying to do to you. Am I incorrect?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is probably the most outlandish example. I don't know. Frost has to compete with Ayanna Pressley in that regard of the most outlandish. But this was the general mode of the questioning. Absolutely.
Right. I want to also I'm going to also play another clip for you. I can't listen to this guy for too long. Sorry. I was actually, you know what my plan was to play that whole clip, but it's just the same garbage. Before I share this clip, Representative Hudson, I want to ask you a few more questions, but I want to share with you a clip of Nick Shirley going on a podcast recently and talking about why Kamala Harris selected Governor Walz to be her running mate and how this fraud is directly connected to that. But I want to ask you a couple questions first. So you have representatives who are essentially trying to architect a very typical pattern, which is to say, this is all about white supremacy. This is all xenophobia. This is all profiling. You have actual representatives who are probably, I have the same kind of notion with the GOP that I do maybe with maybe not as bad, but it's kind of like, it's the same establishment swamp, maybe different species, give or take a few exceptions, who are actually trying to say these are the facts. You have a certain percentage. I think Representative Gill did a great job of questioning Ballou. You have a certain a percentage of this population, over 80% are on welfare. And you call them the most contributing greatest factor to the Minnesota community.
They basically founded the state.
They basically founded the state. So we have all of this going on, and I'm just wondering, like, what are you thinking this whole time? What is it that you wish you could scream at the top of your lungs and say, get this through your head? Is there that kind of a definitive apex moment for you?
Well, I mean, God, there's so many things that could potentially fit into that category. But I think the thing that's most frustrating for me personally, just because of the type of work that I've been doing on the Republican side, that has really been characterized by doing a lot of outreach work and trying to build relationships. And part of that has been, admittedly, within the Somali community. I mean, things were going pretty well before all this. We had a press conference last year in November, right before the election, where a bunch of Somalis were standing in front of a press podium endorsing Donald Trump and saying they were going to vote Republican up and down the ticket. Right. And there were real conversations that were happening that where we were making progress on demonstrating how we have shared values, and if we can just root out the corruption and show a different side of things, then maybe there's some potential here from some political alignment. But unfortunately, that moment obviously came way too late in the process, because now their community shall be judged, like it or not, rightly or wrongly, shall be judged on the facts on record. And the facts on record are what Representative Gill laid out in that committee. You're taking more than you're given,
right,
by an order of magnitude,
right,
and you've allowed it to happen for years. You've said nothing about it. You've been very insular, and to make these kind of late attempts to, or now trying to make this argument of like, well, there's good ones and there's bad ones, which is true, but on a policy level, like you can make those kind of individual distinctions when you're talking about people.
Right.
Like I could introduce you to this dude and say this is a good dude, but I can't make policy based on how good a dude this guy is, right? Policy has to take place at a higher level. You have to deal in aggregates. Like on average, what is it that I'm dealing with here? And so when we talk about these questions of how this should inform our immigration policy and immigration enforcement and our social policies moving forward, those conversations cannot be dominated by the exceptions to the rule. They have to conform with the rule,
right,
in order to be effective policy.
Not the least common denominator. Correct.
Yeah,
I like
exactly.
That. Yeah. So how do we fix this, in your opinion? How do we fix this fraud? How do we fix this corruption? How do we fix what's happening in your state?
Well, what we're going to have to do is, so the analogy that I use is the mafia, right? Which I think is pretty apropos. How did we defeat that? How do we combat organized crime? How do we combat public corruption? Because this isn't the first time this has happened, right?
Of course.
Like you go back to Chicago, Illinois in the 30s, right? You go back to the 1960 election with Kennedy, or 64, whatever it was.
Yeah. Are you saying Trump needs to be Elliot Ness?
Yeah, that's right. So what you need to do, first of all, because there's different silos of reaction, right? There's the prosecutions, which absolutely need to happen, the investigations and prosecutions. There's the government oversight component, where we need to tighten up how these things are overseen at different levels of government. And then there's the political consideration. The problem in Minnesota is that Democrats have been in charge of this state forever.
Tell me about it. I'm from California. It's the same thing.
Yeah. Republicans haven't had a trifecta in the state of Minnesota since 4 years before I was born, 1974. Okay.
Wow.
There hasn't been a statewide.
Good, man. You look really good, Walter. I thought you were younger than me. I thought you were younger. I was born in 76.
Well, on the flip side, I've looked like this since I was 18, so it's a give and take.
Good for you,
right?
man. You look terrific.
But there hasn't been a statewide Republican elected in Minnesota in 20 years.
So do you think the voters are going to actually I keep saying this about California, and you're right, but are you saying that this expose of this massive corruption is going to actually sway the voters' opinion? Listen,
I'll put it this way. If it doesn't,
I'm going
to have a very hard time being sympathetic to my fellow Minnesotans moving forward. Like if after everything you've seen, after everything that's been revealed, you still want to move forward with the same old and keep this cartel in power and watch your tax dollars go out the door while your roads aren't attended to and your schools suck and we have 50% reading proficiency and math proficiency amongst K through 12 students, and that's all acceptable to you. You want to double down on that. Past a certain point, I don't know why I'm trying to convince. I mean, it's like dealing with an addict, right? Like you can make all the reasonable arguments you want and talk about how they're destroying their life. If they want to keep abusing themselves past a certain point, you got to just walk away.
I don't know what it's, honestly, Representative Hudson, I don't know what it's going to take, man, because here's my 2 cents. I thought for sure after everything that was found out about Newscomb, and, we had 3 different recalls.
Yeah.
I thought for sure you're going to vote for Mayor Karen Bass for mayor of Los Angeles. I warned everybody. I said, if she becomes the mayor, that's the end of Los Angeles as we know it. It was already headed down the dump, and everybody voted for her. I go, if you get this guy back in office, even though thank God he's on his way out, just based on terms, but they did. So as I hear you say this, it's almost like I feel like it's a moot point in some way. I mean, I'm with you. I agree with you. But at the same time, I almost feel like, you know what, the stage of hoping, we've passed that stage. We need prosecutions. We need handcuffs. We need, I like how you started with this Elliot Ness kind of, we need to get rid of the mafia kind of type of deal. Yeah. Well, guess what? I've been saying this for a long time. I'd love to get your thoughts on this. And then I want to show you this clip. We don't get rid of the filibuster. We don't get rid of the 60 state Senate cloture and actually pass some legislation, get voter ID, because Kamala Harris did not win a single state that required voter ID. That is alarming. That should alarm everybody. Not one single state.
Yep.
So
no, you're absolutely right. I mean
your notion of, hey, if this doesn't work, I can't look. I get that. Like, I feel that. But hoping that my fellow Californians are gonna step up to the plate, I've lost that hope, man. I really have. Am I wrong? Maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong.
Well, I'm not going to say you're wrong. The feeling is absolutely justified. In an attempt to restore a little bit of hope, what I would say is you got to broaden your historical lens, right? Because there have been these dips before. There have been dark ages in the past,
right.
And plenty of people who've lived through them thought to themselves, nothing's ever going to get better.
This is good. I love perspective. Give me perspective, Walter. I love that.
Yeah. And so, when I talk about prosecutions, we talk about Elliot Ness, like what happens is there gets to be this level of corruption where people are somewhere on the spectrum between apathy of nothing's going to work, nothing's ever going to change, there's no point in me doing anything, to fear. I recognize that there's a problem, that something should be done, but if I stick my head above the trench line, I'm going to get sniped, right? Like, that's kind of the spectrum where everybody seems to be. And then every once in a while, you always got in the midst of that a couple of brave souls who are willing to take on the system, and they get martyred, right?
Right.
And another one pops up and they get martyred. Right. And it becomes this kind of warning signal to the rest of them of like, you better not stick your head above the trench line. But then occasionally something happens where one of those martyrs actually becomes an inspiration for more people to pop up and to overwhelm the system of control and tilt the scales in a direction where more and more people who used to be afraid to act or speak up or bring up evidence start to realize that if they don't do it now, they're going to end up on the wrong side of the revolution to come. That's what needs to happen.
I love that.
That's what's so important about what the Trump administration is doing right now, and why it's so important that they follow through and do what you're talking about, which is, I'm as much an institutionalist as the next conventional politician, but they do need to blow up the filibuster for exactly the reason that you're talking about, because people expect and demand that they get what they voted for.
Exactly.
They're not going to have the patience. We get to the midterms and the Republicans lose the House.
It's over. We can't.
And let's be clear about what it is that will be over. It's not Republic. That's exactly right. Because you're going to have people check out. They're going to be like, after everything we went through, after all the sacrifices, Charlie Kirk getting shot, like all of the things that we've given up and the hope that we put in you folks to give us what you said you would give us, and you didn't deliver when you had the chance. You could have done it, because even the people who are against blowing up the filibuster aren't making the argument that they can't do it.
It's not like it's unprecedented. Obama did.
Yeah.
Obama's
right.
done it before. Yeah.
And so you had the opportunity to save the Republic, and because you were afraid of what might happen hypothetically 20 years from now to you specifically,
it's unbelievable.
You don't want to take action.
Oh, what's next for you? What's next for you, Walter? Where do you go from here?
Well, I'm running for re-election to the House of Representatives here in Minnesota at the state level, and I'm just going to keep on keeping on doing what I'm doing. I'm assistant leader in the caucus here. Who knows what the election results are going to be this year in terms of who has the majorities in the legislature. But I've found a nice little comfortable niche for myself where I've, in short order, I tooting my own horn, I feel like I've become something of a translator to the public of what these institutional processes, how they work. That's kind of the subject matter of my podcast. My YouTube channel is explaining, taking people behind the scenes of why things are happening the way they are, not just what's happening and how I feel about it.
Right.
And so I found a nice little comfortable niche there. As far as my own future of where I might go here, there, or the other, I'm a big believer in the idea that God opens doors when it's time for you to walk through them. So
I love that. God bless. I love that. Absolutely. I hope, and I'm inspired by you, and I feel very confident that Representative Hudson, if you keep at it, man, and you keep God and the truth on your side, I think you're shaping up for some great things in the future. I hope. I wish nothing but the best for you, man. It's been a very impressive, and I genuinely mean this. I've been very impressed. That's why I reached out to you when I saw the way you carried yourself, the conviction in your beliefs and your ideas and what you saw, and being able to be very demonstrative toward the entire world, essentially. That's why I reached out to you, and you've just confirmed that with this great small conversation. I want to give you the floor, but before we do, I want to share this clip. If you have just a few more minutes. This, to me, really kind of, I think this is a great way to sum up this entire theme of what's happened in your state and how I think it translates to what's happening as a whole in our country. This is Nick Shirley on a podcast. It's a very small clip talking about why Kamala Harris picked Tim Walz, and I want to get your thoughts on this. So I'm going to cue this up right now, and I can't wait to get your thoughts on this. Let's watch this real fast.
You know what's interesting about Tim Walz? Why do you think Kamala Harris chose Tim Walz? Nobody knew who he was before.
Why? That is interesting.
The first day he's chosen, he raises the most amount of money than any other candidate in history. I think it's over $35 million he raised for the campaign within just a day of being selected to become the vice president. And now we know all this fraud's happening. How did Tim Walz, he used to be a high school football coach, he's not even from Minnesota, he's from Nebraska. How was he able to raise the most amount of money?
That's great. Do you think the Somalians were funding it?
100%. It had to be some sort of fraud.
What do you think of that, Walter? Wow. I mean, that's a good point.
It raises good questions. I'll say that. It definitely raises good questions. I mean, I think that, we often get accused, and certainly Shirley himself has specifically been accused of being a conspiracy theorist. To my mind, the difference between conspiracy theory and investigation is, the investigation is asking good questions.
Right.
The conspiracy theory is coming up with unsubstantiated conclusions and acting as though that's the absolute truth. Right.
Right.
And I think Shirley sits, he's in a space where he just got all this attention and what have you. And so, he's not a professional journalist or anything like that. So
Thank
he's
God.
still working. Yeah, he's still working on that kind of narrative restraint. Yeah. But the underlying questions that he's asking, I think, are 100% merited and justified.
I mean, it is interesting. I don't think it takes, a genius to kind of surmise that a high school football coach, gets picked to be the potential number two of the most powerful nation on earth, who raised that much money in that short a time, and all this stuff is coming out. I don't think you have to be a genius to connect the two. Again, like you said, I love your political acumen here, and you're being very smart and intelligent and not ascribing anything that is libelous. But man, that's a really, really good question.
An excellent question.
Yeah. Hey, I just want to say, man, I really, on behalf of Nez Nation, our entire crew here, what a pleasure having you here. And if there's anything that we can do I want to give you the floor. Tell everybody where they can meet you, subscribe to you, follow you, support you in any way, shape, or form. You have the floor.
Well, hey, I really appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity to come and talk with you and your viewers, your audience. If you like what you hear and you want to hear more of it, I'm pretty prolific on X. I'm a little bit of an X addict. Been accused of that on more than one occasion, not without substantiation. So you can find me at Walter Hudson on X, constantly posting there almost on a daily basis. And the other place I'd love for people to connect with me is right here on YouTube, where you can just look me up, State Representative Walter Hudson or Walter Hudson. You'll find it.
You know what I'll do? I'll do you one better. I'll leave links in the description and in the pinned comment.
I appreciate it. I'll send you those links, and that really helps me out, right? Because I've got over 100,000 subscribers at this point, which is a big number for a lot of people. But I haven't really made good use of that subscription base until recently. I've kind of got a nice little format going where, regular content. You know how it is. You got to put out stuff on a pretty regular basis, and it's
hard work, man. It's hard work.
So I appreciate people checking that out. And then the last thing, of course, I'll say is HudsonForMN.com. That's the campaign website. I am running for re-election to the House of Representatives. It does require funds in order to run a campaign. And it also, by the way, requires funds to run all over the country, testifying to Congress and the other things that may be coming in the future. So any way people can support in that regard will certainly be helpful.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here on the show. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, everybody, make sure you subscribe, follow. I'll leave links in the pinned comment and in the description. And as always, may God bless you and may God bless the USA and all who defend her. I'll see you guys soon.